The pre-wedding party for my son was held in a fancy restaurant in downtown Charleston. I stood quietly in a corner, watching my son happy, my heart full of pride. Then the bride-to-be walked over, her smile as bright as the lights but her eyes cold as ice. She leaned in and whispered, "After tomorrow, you won't be part of this family anymore." I went numb. Laughter still filled the room. Glasses clinked. No one knew that in that moment, my world collapsed. She curled her lips, her voice low and mocking. "You've done your job," raised him. "Now let me take over." All my life as a single mother, I thought I'd survived the worst nights yet. I had never felt so humiliated. I just smiled, the kind of smile you wear when you know a storm is coming, then slipped out under the bright lights. No one knew that from that second on, I started moving, and what would collapse the next day wouldn't be me, but her dream wedding. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey, and if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. I'm Eleanor Shaw, 66, a retired nurse, living alone in a small house on the outskirts of Charleston, where the sea breeze still slips through the windows on late afternoons, and the lavender I planted by the porch still lingers in the air. For 30 years, I lived for my only son, Nathan Shaw. When my husband left for another woman, Nathan was 6. That night, he held my hand and asked, "Where's Dad going, Mom?" I just hugged him and lied, "Dad's on a work trip, he'll be back." But he never came back. From then on, I was both father and mother. By day, I worked in the ER where people fight for every breath. By night, I picked up extra shifts at a nursing home. Some nights after clocking out, I sat in the car in the parking lot, hands still shaking from exhaustion, and still remembered to swing by the grocery store for milk for Nathan. I got used to the smell of disinfectant and the sound of ventilators. I got used to cold sandwiches for lunch, and to being so tired I forgot my own birthday. Also, my son would never feel lacking, and Nathan, the boy with the same brown eyes as mine, never let me down. He studied hard, behaved, and had a kind heart. I remember him helping poorer classmates, or standing up for kids who were bullied. He once said, "I'm going to be a lawyer so I can protect people who can't protect themselves like you always protect me." I cried that day, not from exhaustion, but from pride. When Nathan grew up, I thought I'd weathered everything. And then, when he brought home Isabella Green, I wanted to believe she was a good one. Isabella worked in marketing, young, beautiful, confident, well put together, the kind of woman I thought my son would be happy with. I truly wanted to love her like a daughter. But from the very first meeting, I felt something was off. She looked around my house, small, tidy, full of memories, with the eyes of someone appraising it. When I served dinner, she took a nibble and put the knife down. "You cook this yourself? That's great. Nathan says you like hands-on work." That wasn't a compliment. It cut like a small, cold blade. I forced a smile and kept my manners. After that, every time we met, she wore a mask, sweet in front of my son, indifferent and chilly when we were alone. She never asked about my life or the years I spent raising Nathan. She only talked about herself, projects, friends, cocktail parties, luxury vacations. I thought maybe it was a generational difference. I was wrong. For the 2 years they dated, I was rarely included in anything. When they got engaged, Isabella announced she'd handle everything to keep it modern. I was invited to one dress fitting just to sit in the hallway. She smiled and said, "Don't worry, you just show up on the day and look elegant." I nodded and swallowed my tears. I still tried to believe she would change. I even spent a month making a wedding gift, a scrapbook of Nathan's life, from his first steps to college graduation, to the day he wore his law school regalia. I thought when Isabella saw it, she'd understand who Nathan really is, and the love I have for my son. But that night, when I brought the scrapbook to the rehearsal party, everything turned. The fancy restaurant hummed with jazz and the scent of wine. People toasted, took pictures, laughed while I stood in a corner holding the gift. Nathan was talking with coworkers, and Isabella, glowing like a queen, was in the middle of her friends. I walked up and said softly, "Isabella, I have something for you too." She turned, the perfect smile still on her face. But when she saw the book in my hands, her eyes dimmed. "I made this for Daniel. For Nathan," I stumbled. "A memory book for you two to look through together." together. She didn't take it. Instead, she tilted her head, leaned in, and spoke low enough that only I could hear, "After tomorrow, you won't be part of this family anymore." Then she smiled, the kind of perfect smile you give after saying something cute. My heart pounded like someone was squeezing it. She went on, mocking, "You've done your job, raised him. Now let me take over. As for you, rest. No need to worry." I stood frozen, still clutching the scrapbook, afraid that if I let go, I'd fall apart too. Around us, people laughed and took photos, not realizing that in that bright room, a mother was being stripped of her place on her own son's happy night. I left the party without remembering whether I said goodbye. I drove home in silence. Charleston's streets still glowed, couples walked by hand in hand, and there I was, alone in my car, listening to the heavy thud of my own heartbeat. At home, I set the scrapbook on the table. I opened to the first photo, Nathan at 4, gap-toothed and grinning, holding a toy fish, and the tears just fell. I had done everything to give him a good life, to keep him safe from harm, and now the person I hoped would be my daughter-in-law was the one breaking my heart. I sat up all night, staring at the book and thinking of the years gone by. Overnight shifts, late tuition payments, sprinting home just to hug him before he fell asleep. All that effort, now reduced to one word: excess. When dawn broke, I wiped my tears, closed the book, and pushed it under the bed. "No," I whispered. "She doesn't get to rewrite this story. Not while I'm alive." I picked up my phone, opened notes, and typed, "June 17th rehearsal party. She said I'm no longer family." I started recording everything: words, actions, expressions, anything I felt needed to be kept, not for revenge, but because I had a feeling, one day, the truth would need to be told. I didn't know that just one day later, that wedding would go up in smoke, and the name Isabella Green would be on everyone's lips in Charleston. And I, the one crossed off from family, would be the last one standing when everything fell apart. When I got home that night, my little house was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking. I sank into a chair, slipped off the heels that had made my feet ache, and looked around the room, the place that held the marks of a lifetime as a single mother. The worn rug underfoot, the sofa I bought that first Christmas after my husband left, the small framed photo on the shelf, Nathan at 6, grinning in a cowboy costume. I remember that day. It was the first time I realized I had to learn to be both parents. 30 years ago, on a fall afternoon, my husband David said he needed time for himself. I thought it was a temporary fight, but it turned out to be the last time he walked out the door. Nathan ran after him. "Where are you going? Are you coming home tonight?" He just patted our son's head and left. The door closed, and there I was, standing alone in an empty house with a 6-year-old and a stack of unpaid bills. What followed were months that turned into years of grind. I picked up night shifts at St. Francis Hospital, working in the ER, where disinfectant mixed with alarm beeps. I worked 12, sometimes 16 hours a day. Sometimes I had to brace myself against a wall when I came home so I wouldn't collapse. But every morning when Nathan woke up, I smiled and pretended I wasn't tired. I didn't want him to see me worn down. I wanted him to believe we were okay. We ate instant noodles so often that Nathan knew exactly which flavor was cheap but good. But every Halloween, I still found a way to buy him a new costume. One year a superhero, another year a doctor, another a detective. I didn't want him to feel less than other kids. Sometimes I skipped lunch to afford a mask, but seeing him run around the house laughing made everything worth it. Nathan grew up with love and without much money, but he never complained. He studied hard, was self-motivated, and had an especially kind heart. I remember coming home late from a Kana Fraud shift when he was 8 and finding him asleep at the table, sketchbook open. He'd drawn 2 people, an adult in a white coat and a smaller child holding hands with a shaky line of words, "I will protect Mom, like Mom always protects me." I broke down, kissing his hair. That sentence, written with a child's unsteady hand, became my guiding light. Every time I was exhausted, I remembered that promise, and I got up, went back to work, kept going. As Nathan grew older, he made me prouder. He earned a scholarship to the University of South Carolina, then got into law school. I still remember the day he called, voice trembling, "Mom, I did it. You don't have to worry anymore." I burst into tears in the hospital hallway, not caring who saw. I knew the sleepless nights, and every penny saved finally meant something. I cut expenses to the bone, sold my old car, scraped together enough for his first semester's tuition. Once, months, I tried to take back-to-back night shifts. For 2 weeks, the attending looked at me and said, "Eleanor, are you trying to kill yourself?" I just smiled. "No, I'm funding a dream." Then Nathan graduated, standing on stage in a black gown, the light catching his bright smile. I sat in the front row, heart ready to burst. In that moment, I thought everything was worth it. Every hardship, every slight for being a woman without a husband, all of it gave me the greatest gift. A son who succeeded, was decent, and loved his mother. After the ceremony, Nathan held my hand. "Mom, once I'm settled, I want you to rest. You've done too much." I smiled and patted his hand. "I just need to see you happy." And I believed it. I believed life would finally be peaceful. When Nathan introduced Isabella, I truly hoped for another child in the family. Isabella was so beautiful that every eye turned to her golden hair, soft voice, confident smile. I hoped she would love my son and be the partner he deserved. I even tidied the kitchen and made honey-glazed roast chicken, Nathan's favorite, just to welcome her the first time. But from the moment she stepped in, a chill ran down my spine. Her gaze skimmed over everything from the family photos to the porcelain tea set I've kept since I was young. She said, "Your home is so traditional. Maybe that's why Nathan values simplicity." I smiled and thanked her, but I knew it wasn't a compliment. That night, she talked on and on about work, trips to Europe, and her family's upscale apartment in Manhattan. I just listened and smiled. After she left, Nathan put an arm around me. "What do you think of her, Mom?" I answered gently. "She's smart and driven, but remember, don't let anyone make you forget where you came from." Nathan laughed. "I never will, Mom." I wanted to believe him, but the more time passed, the more I saw the change. When they had their engagement party, Isabella didn't ask me to help with anything. No cake, no decor, not even the guest list. She said, "You just need to show up and look nice." Light words, but they pierced like a small blade. I smiled again, burying the hurt with the calm of a mother used to enduring. I thought this wedding was the reward for the long road of raising my son. I wanted to believe the pain had ended, that I'd gained someone else to love. Instead, I saw measuring eyes and dismissive words. And then that night, the rehearsal party, Isabella's sentence carved into my heart like a wound that wouldn't heal. "After tomorrow, you won't be part of this family anymore." It echoed in my head all night, like church bells in an empty sanctuary. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, remembering the years I gave up everything for my child. I thought of the little boy who held my hand in the rain and promised to protect me. I thought of extra shifts, cold meals, calluses on my palms, and now all of it reduced to a single act of erasure. I wasn't angry at Nathan. I knew he didn't know, but I hurt with a pain no doctor could fix. It came from betrayal of trust, from being pushed out of my own life. All my life, I endured to give my son a home and a whole childhood. Now that he had everything, I thought I'd finally rest in gratitude and love. Instead, I was cast out of family on the eve of his happiness. I sat up, opened a drawer, and took out the little blue notebook where I'd recorded Nathan's milestones: first day of school, birthdays, graduations. I ran my fingers over each page like it was my own heart. "No," I whispered, "I'm still his mother, no matter what anyone says." Outside, the ocean breeze drifted in with salt and a hint of night chill. I closed the notebook and took a deep breath. The pain was still there, but under it was something else, a kind of awakening. If the world wanted to erase me, I would show them what a woman called no longer family could do when pushed to the edge. After that party, I couldn't sleep. Every time I shut my eyes, Isabella's voice replayed, "You won't be part of this family anymore." It looped like static, sending a shiver down my back each time. When the sun rose, I washed my face, poured a cup of coffee, and told myself to stay calm. Nathan was getting married. I couldn't ruin his happiness over my wounded pride. I thought maybe she was tipsy or testing my boundaries. But what came next told me some things are said with perfect sobriety. From the start, Isabella never hid her fixation on financial futures and social status. She talked about high-rise condos, investments, and the connections you need to get ahead. I once chalked it up to being young, but the more I listened, the colder I felt. When Nathan talked about his first job at a small local firm, she gave a soft laugh. laugh. I think you should aim for one of the big firms in New York or Atlanta. Charleston doesn't offer much. Nathan smiled. I like starting small. My mom taught me that anything worth having is built with your own hands. She raised an eyebrow, half joking. Sure, but your mom doesn't live in today's world. It felt like a slap. She spoke in gentle, polished tones, like everything was well-meaning advice, but under the honey was quiet contempt. When Nathan told her he spent weekends visiting me, having dinner, and watching old movies, she frowned. Babe, we could use that time to network, meet people who matter. Movie nights with your mom. That sounds a little outdated. I said nothing. I smiled when Nathan told me, but a vague dread grew inside me. She started taking Nathan to elegant parties and dinners with friends in marketing, law, and business. They were the kind who spoke in numbers and big plans. Nathan wasn't that type, he used to say. I just want to help people, not race. But slowly, I heard his tone shift. He talked about investments and career opportunities and mentioned less about small cases helping the poor. Worse was how she deliberately cut me out of important moments. She never invited me to gatherings with friends, never told me about shared events. When I asked, Nathan chuckled. She worries you'll be tired, Mom. Those parties are loud. I nodded, not wanting to make him uncomfortable, but I knew that wasn't the truth. Once, for Nathan's birthday, she threw a dinner at the most expensive French restaurant in town. I found out from a neighbor, not from my own son. I still remember the tight pull in my chest seeing the photos online. Nathan in a new suit, arm around Isabella, friends glowing under the lights. And me, alone at home with the chocolate cake I baked like every year, still wrapped in foil. The next week, when Nathan dropped by, I didn't ask. I set the cake on the table and said, I made a birthday cake. Take it home. He smiled, a bit guilty. Thanks, Mom. Isabella wanted a surprise party. I didn't know how to invite you in time. I nodded, pretending to believe him. That smile was just a cover. Inside, my heart was cracking. Another time, at a small get-together at her friend's place, I was invited as a formality. While I stood in a corner holding a glass of water, I heard a young woman ask quietly, So your future mother-in-law used to be a nurse? Isabella laughed, light as glass chimes and sharp as a blade. Yeah, she used to be. Now she's retired. At least she can take care of herself, doesn't need my help. People laughed along, and I stood still. To others, that might sound harmless. I heard every layer. At least she can take care of herself, meaning that's as far as she goes. Not our level. Not fit for the world she and her friends were building. I left early, claiming I was tired. In the car, I sat a long time, watching the glittering lights reflect on the windshield. I didn't cry. I just felt a suffocating emptiness. 15 years in nursing, I'd held strangers' hands in their final minutes, but I had never felt as small as I did hearing that line. I kept my polite distance. I never badmouthed Isabella to Nathan. I feared hurting him, feared becoming the reason he'd be torn between us. But inside, I began to log everything: looks, fake smiles, sweet words laced with venom. I wrote them in my phone, in a little notes app no one knew about. Another time, at their new apartment, Isabella was on a call. I heard her say, He's got huge potential, he just needs the right direction. I don't plan to stay in Charleston forever, the market here is too small. A chill ran through me. I thought of Nathan, the boy who dreamed of staying in this city and opening a small practice to help people. Now he was being directed, bit, by someone who saw only potential to shape. More and more, I realized Isabella didn't want a family, she wanted a deal. Nathan was her long-term project, and I was the obstacle. She didn't want a mother-in-law or a witness to her husband's simple past. She wanted a clean story. Two young, successful people stepping into a perfect marriage. I started noticing details I'd once ignored. When I told Nathan about the old necklace I wore at my own wedding, Isabella cut in. Oh, that vintage look is trending again. I know a shop in New York with pieces just like that, probably pretty cheap. When I gifted them a hand-knit blanket, she smiled and said, It's lovely, but a bit too heavy. It would probably suit your place better. Every word and gesture sketched a clearer picture. I was being erased quietly, without drama like rubbing out an extra pencil line on a pristine canvas. But I'm not easy to erase. I've lived on memory, and detail nursing taught me that. I remember patients' faces, tiny signs before pain hits, promises that never got kept. And now I use that skill to record the moment Aunt Isabella built her perfect world with no place for me. Every night, I opened my phone and typed a few lines. March 22nd, she talked about moving to New York. March 29th, she left me off the guest list. April 4th, told a friend, I used to be a nurse, like it was a stain. I didn't know exactly why I was writing, maybe to steady myself or to prove I wasn't imagining it, that what I saw was real, not pride talking. The more I wrote, the more I understood her, a person who always knew the right thing to say, the right time to smile, and how to hide ambition under charm. Each time she brushed aside a memory between me and my son, my heart cinched tighter, and at the same time, a small fire grew inside me. Not anger, but clarity. I'd stood on the edge of exhaustion and survived. I could stand there again, and no matter how many perfect images she built, I knew no picture holds if the background is erased. I, the one called excess, am that background, and soon she'll learn. You can't build a future by burying the past. That morning, the day I should have been sitting in the front row at my son's wedding, the Charleston sky was unusually clear. The first sunlight slipped through the curtains and fell across the dining table where the wedding invitation still lay, half open. I woke early out of habit, boiled water for a cup of black tea, and watched the steam blur over the wooden tabletop. In the corner, the teal dress I'd hung up weeks ago was still crisp and perfect, the color Nathan once said, looks beautiful on you, like sunrise. I stared at it for a long time. That color no longer felt like sunrise. It looked like a lonely streak of light in a room crowded with memories. I sat down, gripping my cup to steady myself. The phone started ringing. Then, one call, 2, 3, friends, old co-workers, distant relatives. Everyone had the same tone, hurried, surprised, even scolding. Eleanor, where are you? The wedding car is almost there. My God, why aren't you answering? Your son is the groom. They must be worried sick. I stayed silent and listened. When the 5th call came, I turned the ringer off and flipped the invitation over. Nathan and Isabella was embossed on cream paper, with a small line beneath, with love and gratitude to our families. I gave a thin smile. With gratitude to our families. After last night, when she whispered that I was no longer part of the family, those words had turned into bitter irony. I took a sip of tea and looked at the clock. 7:45 a.m. If things had gone as planned, I'd be getting my makeup done now, choosing shoes, calling a cab to Street Matthews. I had pictured this day so many times, Nathan glancing back, seeing me in the front row, smiling with pride, eyes wet, but now there was only the ticking clock and sunlight crawling up the hem of the dress. I told myself quietly, no, one can force me to sit through my own erasure. I didn't cry. I figured the tears had run out last night. Around 9 a.m., the knocking came hard and fast. It was my sister, Margaret. She wore a pale blue dress, the bridesmaid's color. Her hair was neatly curled, her heels still dusty from the road. When I opened the door, she practically rushed in. Eleanor, what are you doing? The whole church is asking where you are. Calmly, I said. I'm not going. Margaret stared, stunned. Not going? What are you saying? Today is Nathan's wedding. Your son! I lifted my head, my voice rough but steady. She told me last night, after today, I'm no longer part of the family. So I'm honoring her words. Margaret froze, staring at me. After a few seconds, she sank into a chair with a long sigh, hand to her forehead. God, Eleanor, do you know what people will think? They'll call you bitter. They'll say you ruined your son's big day. I let out a laugh, with no joy in it. I've already been labeled excess. What else is there to fear? She looked around the room and her eyes landed on the teal dress hanging neatly. She stepped over and brushed the fabric with her fingers. It's beautiful. Wear it today at least, for Nathan. I shook my head. No, it won't be Nathan's day if I show up. It'll be her day, and she's made it clear she doesn't want me there. My voice was gentle, but I knew Margaret heard it break at the end. She went quiet for a moment, then pleaded again, but at least go just to be seen. Otherwise, people will start rumors. I sat down, poured more tea, and slid the cup toward her. Margaret, I don't live for rumors anymore. I've spent a lifetime living for other people. Today, I'm choosing silence. The air went still. Outside the window, traffic grew busier, guests, probably, heading to the church. I could even hear faint bells in the distance, like smoke, signaling the ceremony was near. Margaret looked at me, eyes glossy. Eleanor, I don't know what to say. I squeezed her hand. I know you love me, but this is the only choice that lets me keep a little self-respect. At 9:30 a.m., Margaret left after saying in a shaky voice, voice, "At least turn your phone on. If Nathan calls, don't make him think you gave up on him." I nodded and walked her to the door. When it closed, the house fell quiet again. I went back to the table, looked at the dress once more, then folded it and tucked it carefully into the closet. I poured more hot water and drank slowly. Each distant peal from the church bells tightened my chest, but I stayed put, holding steady. I pictured Nathan, his smile in a black suit, the bright look in his eyes when he once said, "Mom, I found the person I want to spend my life with. I only hope today he'd truly be happy, even if that happiness had no room for me." At 10 a.m., the phone started ringing nonstop. I didn't pick up. A voicemail came through, his voice trembling. "Mom, I'm on my way to the church. Where are you? I know you're not tired. Please don't hide. It's my day. You can't be missing." Nathan's voice shook with urgency. I pressed the phone to my chest, closed my eyes, and cried before I could stop myself. I wanted to run out the door, go to him, hold him the way I did when he was little, but then I remembered Isabella's words and that cold stare. Softly, to myself, I said, "No, Eleanor, not today. Your son needs to see the truth, even if it hurts." Around 10:30 a.m., a car pulled up. Margaret rushed back in, hair mussed, dress wrinkled, out of breath. "I can't stand it, Eleanor. The whole church is buzzing. Everyone's asking where you are. Nathan is looking for you everywhere. You have to go." I looked at her and shook my head. "No, I've decided. I'm not going. If she wants a perfect wedding without me, let her have it." Margaret gripped my hands, tears spilling. "Eleanor, you'll regret this." I smiled, and tears slid down my face too. "Maybe, but if I regret anything, it'll be in dignity, not in bowing my head." At 11 a.m., the church bells began to ring. I watched the clock, my stomach twisting. Each chime fell like a blade. I pictured everyone standing, the choir starting to sing, Nathan taking his place, then Isabella entering in white, lights reflecting off her face. I closed my eyes, trying to imagine my son's smile. I wanted to believe that at the very least, he kept in his heart the image of a mother standing outside the church doors, praying for his peace. Time crawled. Near noon, sunlight poured through the window, streaking the floor with bright bands. I made more tea and sat in the old wooden chair. The second hand ticked on until the phone rang again. It was Margaret. Her voice shook like she'd seen something impossible. "Eleanor, are you sitting down?" I squinted, my heart pounding. "What happened? The wedding?" "The wedding's off. Charleston was beautiful that morning, but the midday message was ice cold." "Who do you think is most at fault at this turning point, Isabella, or Eleanor's forced silence? Share your thoughts. I'll read every comment." I jumped up. The teacup hit the floor and shattered, steam curling into the heavy air. "What do you mean? Cancelled? Why?" Margaret took a long breath. "I don't have it all yet, but something awful happened. The church is in chaos. People are talking everywhere." I went blank for a few seconds, then fell back into the chair. I couldn't name what I felt: fear, confusion, or a dark premonition rolling in. I only heard Margaret again, small and urgent. "Eleanor, brace yourself. This is going to shake the whole city." I gripped the phone, my palms ice cold. I didn't ask for details. I just lifted my eyes to the teal dress, still hanging in the one closet, silent, like a witness to a bitter decision. After she hung up, I sat still for a long time. Two sentences clashed in my head, cruelly opposed. My son just lost the woman he loved, and she finally got what she deserved. I didn't know what had truly happened, but deep down, I knew a storm had begun. And this time, I wouldn't be the one to bear the consequences. The phone was still in my hand when Margaret's voice broke again on the other end. I could hear the noise behind her, shouting, footsteps, and somewhere, messy sobs. Then through it all, my sister's voice came, shaking so much I had to hold my breath to catch it. "Eleanor, Nathan found out she was cheating." Everything around me went eerily quiet. The wall clock still ticked, but I barely heard it. I just stood there, staring at nothing, feeling hollowed out. I couldn't believe what I'd heard. Margaret spoke fast, breathless. "The best man, Mark. Nathan's close friend from college showed him photos. Isabella, with her boss, taken 2 weeks before the wedding. It's clear, Eleanor, there's no way to deny it." I clenched the phone until my fingertips went white. I saw Isabella in a white gown, smiling under bright lights, saying sweet things. At the same time, I saw Nathan, my son, with the most trusting, earnest eyes, looking at that woman, unaware he was just a piece on her board. I steadied my voice. Is he okay, Margaret? Did Nathan do anything impulsive? No, but he's shattered. Eleanor, I've never seen him like this. The whole church went dead silent when Mark handed him the phone. Margaret kept going, each word cutting into me. Around 10:30 a.m., Nathan was in the prep room with his friends. Everyone was joking with the groom. Then Mark walked in pale, phone in his hand. Nathan, you need to see this, he said, voice tight. On the screen were phone photos. Isabella in a red dress, arm in arm with her boss Anne, older, tall man with a gold watch. They were in a bar, under dim lights, their mouths almost touching. In the last shot, Isabella leaned on his shoulder, smiling, eyes shining like that was where she truly belonged. At first, Nathan didn't believe it. He thought they were old photos, a nasty prank. But Mark shook his head. A neighbor of hers sent these, taken 2 weeks ago. I wasn't going to show you, but I couldn't let you marry her without knowing. Margaret said. Nathan went silent for almost a minute, then exhaled, tossed his handkerchief onto the table, and walked straight to the bridal room without waiting for anyone. Inside, Isabella was having her lipstick touched up. When Nathan opened the door, the room froze. Sweetheart, what's wrong? You can't be in here, you'll see the dress, she said, half teasing. Nathan said nothing, just held out the phone. Explain, he said, voice hoarse. She glanced at the screen and froze for 2 seconds. Then, like she'd rehearsed, she gave a small laugh. Oh please, who sent you this? Obviously old photos. He's just my boss, you know that. Nathan didn't move. They were taken 2 weeks ago. You're lying. His voice jumped, making the makeup artist drop a brush. Isabella stepped closer, trying to grab his hand. Someone's poisoning you. It's your mother, isn't it? She never accepted me. She wants to ruin this. I know it. She's never liked me. Nathan cut her off, thunder in his voice. That's enough. My mother didn't ruin anything. You did. The room went silent. After a few beats, Isabella still tried to salvage it. Nathan, you misunderstood. She hates me, But Nathan had already walked out. Margaret said that when he stepped back into the hall, his face was white, his eyes red. Rumors spread like wildfire. Within minutes, the pews buzzed. People whispered, then went silent as Nathan walked to the altar, the priest still confused. The priest looked up, flustered. Son, there are 10 minutes before the ceremony. Nathan raised a hand. No need, Father, his voice carried through the quiet. Then he turned to the crowd and spoke clearly, word by word. I'm sorry, there won't be a wedding today. A wave of murmurs rolled through the church. I could picture it, shocked faces, paper fans stilled, all eyes on the groom. Isabella walked in right after, her white dress glittering. She saw Nathan at the front, fists clenched, face blank. Nathan, what are you saying? You know exactly what, Nathan said, holding up the phone. And you know why. Gasps rippled through the pews. Isabella looked around, pale, then forced a smile. It must be a joke. Edited photos. Your mother, Nathan roared. Don't talk about my mother. It hit like a hammer on the floor. Someone said a woman in the back row started crying. Some guests lowered their eyes, avoiding the groom's gaze. Margaret said in that moment Nathan became someone else, hurt, but strong. He stared at Isabella, voice shaking but firm. You told my mother she wasn't family. You were wrong. You never understood what family is. The air in the church thickened. You could hear the whisper of Tool as Isabella stepped back, tears spilling. You'll regret this, she screamed. You're destroying your life. Nathan answered once, cold. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just done lying to myself. Then he turned, walked straight down the aisle, past the guests, past Isabella's parents frozen in the front row. A few people tried to stop him, but it was useless. The doors opened, noon light flooded in so bright people shielded their eyes. Nathan stepped outside without looking back. Behind him, Isabella collapsed, her dress smudged, lipstick streaked. Whispers spread like a sudden storm. She cheated. Before the wedding. God, that poor groom. By the time Margaret got to this part, I was still standing by the window. A light breeze moved the curtain. I realized I'd been crying without noticing. The whole church is chaos, Margaret whispered. People can't believe it. Some guests left in silence. The priest could only pray. Isabella's parents are arguing with the press at the gate. Eleanor, this is going to be all over the city. I sank into a chair, tears pooling in my hands. I didn't know if they were tears of pain or relief, maybe both. My son, the boy I feared would be used and hurt, finally saw the truth, but the price was brutal. I looked at Nathan's graduation photo, the silver frame catching dull light. I brushed a finger over his face in the picture and whispered, "Son, I prayed you'd see her for who she is. I just never thought it would happen like this." The phone rang again. A neighbor, then an old friend from the hospital, then people I barely remembered. Everyone wanted to tell me about the earth-shattering scene at Street Matthews this morning. Everyone asked if I knew beforehand. I said only one thing. I only knew the truth always finds its way out. That afternoon I sat by the window, listening to wind move through the magnolia trees out front. Local news blurbs started mentioning a last-minute canceled wedding rattling Charleston's upper set. I listened, hollow. Amid the chaos, a strange calm rose in me, not gloating, but relief that my son was freed before a marriage chained him for life. I closed my eyes and whispered a thank you. Thank you for letting him see, before it was too late. Outside, dusk settled. The last light of day fell on the teal dress in the closet, still perfect, never worn. I walked over, touched the fabric, and murmured, "Today, my son didn't marry her, but he found himself again," and I knew the storm had only just begun. That afternoon, just as the sun dipped behind the magnolia trees off my porch, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. At first, I thought a family member was calling to ask about Nathan, but then the screen filled with one notification after another. Charleston Daily Post, City Herald, and social media pages flooded with the same headline. Mother of the groom ruins wedding. Dream ceremony falls apart at the last minute. I read the line over and over, like my eyes were betraying my mind. Beneath it was a photo of Isabella in her white wedding dress, mascara smeared, both hands covering her face. The caption was shaky, weak, but calculated. Some people don't know when to let go. In the picture, she looked like the most pitiful victim in the world, the woman harmed by a selfish mother-in-law. I went still, not because I felt insulted, but because of how perfectly they built that story. Comments popped up like knives, one after another. Typical jealous mother-in-law competing with the young bride. Poor bride stuck with a controlling mom. Heard the mom. Refused to attend and spread rumors to ruin the wedding. I sat in the dark, the phone screen bright like a flashlight on an open wound. In just a few hours, I, the woman who raised her son with everything she had had, become a jealous old hag to thousands of strangers. As evening fell, neighbors started appearing at my gate. Some knocked to pry, others just stared and walked away. An old friend from the hospital texted, "Eleanor, did you really tell your daughter-in-law she's not family?" I answered with 2 words, "Absolutely not." But I knew the more you explain, the more people believe the opposite. The next morning, I went to the market like usual. The produce lady who'd once congratulated me for getting such a beautiful daughter-in-law looked at me, stayed quiet, then turned away. I forced a smile and wrapped my greens. Shame rose in me like a wave. When I got home, Nathan was already sitting on the steps. His face was drawn, dark circles under, his eyes from no sleep. He stood when he saw me, voice tired. "Mom, you have to promise me something." I set my bags down and asked gently, "What is it, son?" "Don't respond. Don't post anything, don't talk to the press. They just want more to feed on. If you stay quiet, they'll get bored and move on." I looked at my son, the same son who had stood up for me in church, now bracing himself to carry the weight. I felt tender toward him, and it hurt. "You believe they'll forget?" I asked. Nathan scratched his head, voice thinning. "All it takes is time, Mom. If you speak up, they'll say you're trying to justify yourself. It'll be worse." I didn't answer right away. My own words from years ago echoed in my head. Silence can be protection sometimes, but now I understood this silence wasn't protection. It was erasure. 2 days later, as I was making my morning tea, a knock came at the door. The mailman stood outside holding a thick, sealed, yellow envelope. I signed, thinking it was bank paperwork, but when I opened it, I saw cold, italicized words, "Notice of lawsuit for causing emotional distress and interfering with with marriage. I reread every line. My name, Eleanor Shaw, sat in the defendant box. Above it were the names of Isabella Green and her parents. I thought I must be dreaming. My hands shook. I sat down and read again. Willful infliction of emotional pressure and defamation, resulting in irreparable harm to the party. I let out a flat laugh. Harm? Who exactly was harmed here? That afternoon, I took the envelope to the office of Linda Cole, my friend, a retired attorney who still advises a small law firm in downtown Charleston. Linda is a woman in her 60s, petite, cropped silver hair, eyes sharp as a blade. When I set the papers on her desk, she looked at me and frowned. You look like you just swallowed a storm. I told her everything from the night Isabella pushed me out of the round rehearsal dinner, to the collapsed wedding, to the accusations exploding online. Linda flipped through the complaint and gave a short, dry laugh. Eleanor, this isn't a real lawsuit. It's a scare tactic. I looked up, not believing it. What? Look at this line, she said, pointing to interference with contractual relations. They're claiming you wrecked a marriage contract, but the law doesn't treat a wedding like a commercial contract. There's no legal basis for this. They just want to frighten you into staying quiet. I exhaled, but the lump of anger stayed. Why would they do this? They've smeared me everywhere, and now they're sending legal threats? Linda leaned back, took off her glasses, and looked straight at me. Because, Eleanor, they lost money. That stopped me cold. What do you mean? You really didn't know? Linda's voice dropped. Isabella's family is broke. Her father tanked 3 real estate projects. They needed this marriage to stabilize their cash flow. Nathan, with a law degree and a bright future, was their life raft. That wedding was a debt rescue plan, not love. I sat quiet, heart pounding. The pieces clicked: her talk about financial future, the way Isabella sized everything up, her control over every wedding detail. It wasn't care, it was calculus. Linda went on, firm. They thought they could control Nathan through marriage, and you, the single mother, were the obstacle. When Nathan discovered the truth, they lost everything. So, now they need a scapegoat. I gave a sad smile as tears slipped out without me noticing. And that scapegoat, of course, is me. Linda stood and poured me a glass of water. Right, in every failure people need a villain, and no role is more convenient than a quiet mother-in-law. I gripped the glass, my voice tight. Linda, I'm not afraid of a lawsuit. I'm afraid people will believe I destroyed my fine son's happiness. She smiled softly and squeezed my hand. Eleanor, you raised your son for nearly 30 years with these hands. No one gets to redefine that. But if you want your name back, you fight with facts, not tears. I looked at her. The afternoon light, glinting off her lenses, made her face seem both tough and warm. I knew she was right. They'd used my silence to strengthen their lie. If I stayed quiet, they would win. That evening when I got home, I opened my phone and watched the posts still spreading. A few close friends advised, just endure it, that time will tell. But I knew time only reveals truth for those willing to speak it. I opened a drawer and pulled out the small notebook where I'd recorded everything since meeting Isabella. The cutting remarks, the details she dropped at parties, even a text thread I'd accidentally seen on Nathan's phone where she asked him to transfer money to my dad, just for now. I ran a hand over the cover and said to myself, fine, if they want a war over reputation, I'll fight, but with the truth. Outside, night wind moved through the window frame, leaves scratching softly. I knew this would be a long fight, but after years of enduring, I was no longer the mother who only stayed silent. And for the first time since the wedding fell apart, I felt strangely calm. Because now I had the one thing they couldn't deny: the truth. 2 days after our meeting, Linda called me near noon. Her voice was rough and urgent, like she'd been arguing or up all night. Eleanor, I just found what you need to see, she said. What is it? Evidence. A lot of what they don't want you to see. That afternoon, I went to her small office in downtown Charleston. The room was on the second floor of an old building, yellowed walls, the smell of coffee mixed with old paper. Linda sat behind her desk, a stack of files, and an open laptop in front of her. When I walked in, she looked up, more serious than ever. Sit, she said slowly. I've reviewed Isabella's father's company, Green Capital Group. On the surface, their operation operating. In reality, they're on the brink of bankruptcy, I frowned. Bankruptcy? Yes. They owe the bank more than $2 million and are being sued for investment fraud. 2 real estate projects in Florida and Savannah failed. Her father, Richard Green, used personal loans to keep it afloat, but next month they'll start repossessing assets. I sat still. The picture sharpened. I remembered Isabella saying, "Nathan has a stable future. He'll be the financial backbone for both of us." Now I understood backbone wasn't for her alone. It was for the whole family. Linda flipped to another packet, printed emails and accounting summaries. "I found something else," she said, handing me a set. It was a draft prenuptial agreement. "Look here." Linda tapped a highlighted section. Clause 12. In the first 5 years of marriage, 70% of Nathan's net income goes into a joint account in the names of Nathan Shaw and Isabella Green. What's more, that account grants access to Richard Green, her father. My eyes widened. Good Lord, Linda nodded. If they married, Richard would have legal control over that money. Once Nathan signed, he'd be tied up completely. They didn't just want salary, they wanted Nathan's future. My hands shook as I turned the pages, dry legal language like steel. Each line felt like a blade. I remembered the first night I met Isabella, her smile when she spoke about financial stability, her line about marriage as a partnership between two people with vision. Back then I sensed something off, but I told myself maybe she just wanted a better life. Now I understood it wasn't better, it was possession. My voice caught. "Linda, are you sure? Is all of this real?" She looked at me without flinching. "I never say what I haven't verified. These filings are from public financial court records. As for the prenup, a colleague who once consulted for the Greens sent it. They didn't rush to destroy it because they assumed the wedding was a lock." I leaned back, heart thudding. The room tilted, the air suddenly heavy. "So," I said slowly, "it was a transaction. She never loved my son." Linda nodded. "That's right. Isabella was a piece on the board. They wanted to save the company and their name. Nathan was perfect. Young lawyer, talented, not from their social tier, easier to control." I gave a thin smile as tears fell onto my hand. "They really planned it all out like that," Linda sighed. "In the world of money, people will sell even love, and they did." I went quiet for a long time. I saw Nathan, the same boy who once said, "Mom, I just want someone genuine." What he got was a financial plan wearing love's mask. I was furious, and I was heartsick. Linda softened her voice. "I know it's a lot, but Eleanor, this is your chance. You can clear your name, and more importantly, expose the truth." I looked at her. In the warm afternoon light, the deep lines on Linda's face showed a woman who'd seen too much injustice. "I don't just want to be cleared," I said, low but firm. "I want them held accountable for trying to wreck my son's life." She nodded and slid a small USB drive toward me. "This has copies of the prenup, emails, and Green Capital's financials. Keep it safe. Tell no one but me." I picked it up. It felt heavy, like a stone. "What will you do with it?" I asked. "I'll send a copy to a financial investigative journalist," she said. "He's exposed big scandals in Atlanta. But be ready once this is out. There's no going back." I nodded. "I don't want to go back, Linda. I've spent my life enduring. Not anymore." She smiled and put a hand on my prox shoulder. "Good. That's the strong mother I know." That night, I went home. A light rain fell, tapping the eaves like a racing heartbeat. I switched on the light, opened the cabinet, and took out my notebook, the one I'd started the night Isabella pushed me out of the party. I turned the pages and added what Linda gave me. The printed agreement, screenshots of emails, bank slips. I reread the messy line I wrote weeks ago. "I won't let them erase me from my son's life." Then I added a new line beneath it, neat and final. "I won't let them take my son's future." I didn't sleep. I sat by the window and watched rain roll down the glass, feeling something strange, not fear, but clarity. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what to do. I wouldn't just clear my name. I would expose everything with the light of truth, and I swore, no matter their money or influence, I, the mother they called not family anymore, would be the one to make them pay. 3 days after I learned the full truth about the Green family, an invitation arrived at my house. Not ordinary stationery, a fancy envelope envelope embossed with the Charleston Grand Plaza Hotel logo. Inside was an invitation to a reconciliation dinner, signed by Richard Green, with a smooth line in blue ink. "Let's talk like adults and put an end to all misunderstandings." I read it again and gave a cold smile. Misunderstandings? I thought. When someone tries to steal your child's future, that's not a misunderstanding, it's a scheme. That afternoon, Nathan stopped by. The exhaustion showed on his face. He held the letter and shook his head. "Mom, don't go. I know them. That dinner isn't reconciliation, it's a setup. They want you to apologize publicly to rescue their reputation." I put a hand on his shoulder. "Did you forget, Nathan? I'm not the frightened woman I used to be." He stayed quiet, worry in his eyes. "If they pull something, you'll be alone against all of them?" I smiled, calm. "No, son, I'm not going to fight them. I'm going to end this with the truth." That evening, I opened the closet and took out the teal dress that had hung there for days. The dress I was supposed to wear to my son's wedding, the day my joy was taken. I smoothed the fabric, put it on, and looked in the mirror. In the dim light, the face that stared back wasn't a frail mother. It was a woman who had stood up from wreckage. I slid the file Linda prepared into my bag and drove to the hotel. Charleston was humid and close that night. Streetlights hazed like smoke. The Grand Plaza glowed, crowded with people. I took a breath and went through the revolving door, my heartbeat slowing as if I were stepping onto a stage where I already knew every line. The private dining room was on the 10th floor. When the host opened the door, they were already there. Richard Green at the head, heavyset, face flushed with liquor, his wife, Marion, with a thin smile and cold eyes, and Isabella, blonde hair neatly twisted up, bright red lips, a fitted black dress. She looked at me, lips curling. "Oh, you really came. I thought you'd hide like before." I pulled out a chair and sat across from them, setting my bag down, voice even. "I'm not hiding from anything, Isabella. But tonight you're the ones who should be explaining." She laughed high and sharp. "Explaining what? I thought you came to apologize. My father already said we can settle this peacefully if you accept your share of responsibility." I tilted my head. "Responsibility for what?" Richard cut in, voice low and authoritative. "You know, Mrs. Shaw, your silence led the public to the wrong conclusion. We just want a statement confirming you didn't intentionally sabotage the wedding. Do that, and this ends." I smiled and slowly pulled a thick file from my bag, laying it on the table. "Yes, I have a statement, but not the kind you're expecting, Mr. Green." Isabella narrowed her eyes, lips twitching. "What now? Going to wave old photos around? Or retell how I insulted you? No one's gonna buy it." I opened the file and took out the first page, the prenup Linda gave me. Clear print, faint ink where signatures would go. I placed it in front of them and spoke clean and steady. Clause 12. In the first 5 years of marriage, 70% of Nathan Shaw's net income will be transferred into a joint account owned by Nathan Shaw and Isabella Green. This account grants access to Richard Green. I paused and looked around the table. For a few seconds, no one said a word. The air got so thick I could hear the hum of the vent overhead. Marion set down her glass, her hand trembling. Richard leaned back, his face turning from red to chalk. Isabella tried to hold a smile, but the corner of her mouth twitched. I went on, slow and sharp. "Mr. Green, I don't know if, in your world, marriage is a tool to rescue a company. In mine, marriage is love, not a business contract. You weren't marrying into my family. You were marrying a bank." Richard slammed his hand on the table. The glass rattled, red liquid sloshing like blood. "You dare accuse me?" I met his eyes, calmer than ever. "Not accusing, reading aloud what you wrote." Isabella shot to her feet, voice shrill. "Who do you think will believe this? You got those papers illegally. They're worthless in court." I gave a small smile. "How about moral weight, Isabella? Or is that a concept you've never heard of?" Her face flushed. She turned to Richard. "Dad, don't let her smear us in front of the press," Richard growled. "The press? You'd take this public, Mrs. Shaw?" I stood up, slowly gathered the documents, and lowered my voice. "Did you just ask if I dare?" I looked straight at Isabella, my eyes cold as steel. "Watch me." In that moment, the room almost exploded in silence. No one spoke. No one even dared to breathe. Marion jumped to her feet, trying to calm things down. "Come on now, let's not make this any bigger. Eleanor, you misunderstood. I cut her off. "Do you know what I misunderstood? I misunderstood that my son was truly loved. The truth is, none of you have ever loved anyone but yourselves." I turned to Nathan. He had appeared at the doorway. I didn't know when he arrived. Maybe Linda had warned him. He stood still, eyes wide as he listened to me read the agreement. When our eyes met, what I saw in his wasn't fear, it was trust. Richard tried to stand, his voice cracking. "Nathan, don't believe her. This is fabricated, a tactic to—" But Nathan interrupted, his voice ringing out strong enough to silence everyone. "I've believed the wrong people long enough." He stepped closer and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Mom, you don't need to say anything else. I've seen enough." Then, he turned to Isabella, who was still trembling, forcing a smile. "You said you loved me, but it turns out you only loved my bank account. You and your family turned marriage into a product for sale. But believe me, you will never buy back the dignity you lost." Isabella went pale, her voice choking. "You'll pay for defaming me." Nathan answered coolly, "No, Isabella, you'll pay for treating love like merchandise." I gently squeezed my son's hand and whispered, "Now you understand, don't you?" He nodded, gratitude in his eyes. No one in the Green family said another word. As Nathan and I turned to leave, I heard Marion collapse into a chair, Richard curse under his breath, and Isabella sob not out of remorse, but because she'd lost. Walking out of the hotel lobby, the night wind off the Ashley River blew hard, carrying damp air and a salty tang. I lifted my face to the sky, where clouds drifted slowly past the lights. For the first time in months, I felt truly relieved. Nathan walked beside me in silence. After a moment, he said softly, "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't see what you saw." I smiled and wrapped my arms around him. "It's all right, Nathan. What matters is you see it now." We walked through Charleston's night, golden streetlights stretching across the misty pavement. Inside me, there was no resentment left, only a strange, quiet peace. Because I knew, from that moment on, they had lost the one thing money can't buy back: the truth. 2 days after the confrontation at the hotel, Linda came to my house. She carried an old leather bag with the documents I'd seen, along with a few newspapers and a small USB drive. There was something in her eyes, both cool and bright. "Eleanor," she said, "it's time." I set my teacup down gently. "Are you sure, Linda? Once the truth is out, they won't leave us alone." She gave a dry laugh. "You think they're leaving you alone now? You've been turned into a wicked old hag online for weeks. It's time they tasted what they've been dishing out." I stayed quiet for a moment. From the window, Charleston's morning light fell across the little garden where yellow chrysanthemums were blooming. They reminded me of what Nathan used to say as a child, "Mom, the light always finds a way." Maybe this was the moment the light found me. Linda opened her laptop and started a video call. A face appeared, a man in his 40s, slightly messy hair, glasses, a steady voice. "Eleanor, I'm Travis Dalton, an investigative reporter with the Carolina Ledger. Linda's told me part of your story." I nodded, hands clasped lightly. "I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want the truth to be known," Travis replied. "And that's exactly why I'm here. But I need you to be ready. When this runs, it won't just be news. It'll be a storm." I smiled faintly and said slowly, "Sometimes a storm is the only thing that can clear the poverty's sky." 3 days later, Linda and I met Travis at a small cafe near the harbor. He had verified everything: the prenuptial agreement, bank statements, internal emails, and the financial records of Green Capital Group. His voice dropped. "Eleanor, this isn't just marital fraud. This is a sophisticated financial scheme. They used marriage as a tool to wash away debt." I felt my heart sink. "And now they've lost everything. Yet I'm the one seen as the saboteur." Travis looked at me, serious. "It won't be long before people know who the real saboteur is." A week later, on a Monday morning, while I was watering the front yard, the phone started ringing non-stop. The sound echoed through the house. I picked up and heard my sister Margaret, breathless. "Eleanor, have you seen the news? It's out. All of Charleston is blowing up." I ran inside and turned on the TV. On the screen, the Carolina Ledger's logo appeared with a bold headline filling the whole display. "Green family accused of financial fraud, marriage plan designed to seize assets." I froze for a few seconds. Then the footage shifted to a news package. Green Capital's office sealed, police on site, and enlarged shots of the contracts, the very ones I had held in my hands. The anchor's voice came through. "The Carolina Ledger's exclusive investigation shows that Green Capital covertly planned a marriage between their daughter, Isabella Green, and young attorney Nathan Shaw, with a clause transferring 70% of the groom's income to an account controlled by the Green family. Sources confirm the groom's mother, Mrs. Eleanor Shaw, was defamed and targeted after she uncovered the scheme. time. I placed a hand over my chest, feeling my heart pound. I could hardly believe I was witnessing it. Linda texted, "It's spreading, Ellie. Everyone knows the truth." Social media, once full of insults, shifted. I watched new comments roll in every second. I thought she was cruel. Turns out she was the only clear-headed one. No one should go through that at her age. Deeply admire Eleanor Shaw's strength. The bride was just a financial tool. Horrifying. The feeling was strange. Not joy exactly, but a kind of release, as if the heavy fog that had smothered me for months finally lifted, leaving air that was fresh and painfully honest. The story spread like fire in the wind. 3 days later, the Charleston Tribune, the Daily Sun, and even national TV ran it. Marriage scandal businessman Richard Green under investigation for financial fraud. Isabella disappeared from social media within hours. Her accounts were wiped clean. Wedding photos, posts about being a target of jealousy, all gone. A mutual acquaintance messaged me. She left Charleston. No one knows where. As for Richard Green, the man who once sat at the head of the table with a glass of red wine and a smug smile, he now appeared on the proceeded from Kant News with a gray face, escorted out of his office by police. Marion hid behind a car door to avoid cameras. I stood in my living room and watched it all on the screen. In that moment, I felt no gloating, only a quiet sadness. Some victories don't make you happy. They just let you breathe because justice still exists. That evening, Nathan came by. He looked different, less tense, less weighed down. He put a hand on my shoulder and said softly, "I read everything, Mom." The article made it clear. They can't deny it anymore. I looked at him, tears rolling before I could stop them. "Nathan, I just want you to be happy. That's all." He squeezed my hand, voice tight. "I'm proud of you. You didn't stay silent. You did what your son didn't have the courage to do." I smiled through tears. "No, son. I just did what a mother is supposed to do, protect her child." We sat together for a long time. Outside, a light rain fell. The steady tapping on the eaves sounded like it was washing away the old accusations. I brewed 2 cups of tea, poured them, and the scent of bergamot filled the room, the smell of those peaceful evenings we used to have. Nathan told me that since the article ran, his law office had received countless messages of support and co-workers had rallied around him. "People say I escaped a financial trap, but for me," he paused, voice dropping, "the most important thing is I got my mom back." I chuckled softly. "I never went anywhere, Nathan." That night, after he left for home, I opened the window and looked out. The city glowed, lights like stars dropped to the ground. I remembered Isabella's words at that party. "After tomorrow, you won't be part of this family anymore." That sentence once stabbed through my heart. But now, standing in this generous light, I realized the one cut out of the family wasn't me, it was her. Because once love becomes a contract and marriage becomes a tool, there is no— I smiled faintly and whispered a small prayer. The truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs to be seen. And that Charleston night, with the rain falling softly, I felt I'd gotten back the most precious thing, and peace. 2 months after that article, Charleston seemed to settle back into its usual rhythm, or maybe it only looked that way. Beneath the calm, I knew something had changed forever. In me, in Nathan, and in how this city saw me. In those first days, I still woke very early, as if my body wasn't used to not being on guard. I brewed tea, walked around my small garden, and listened to birds singing on the roof. The quiet felt both new and unfamiliar. Some mornings, I caught myself staring into the mirror, wondering, have I really made it through? Nathan kept busy again. After leaving his old firm, a friend got him a job at a smaller practice on the north side of town. There, my son didn't have to dress to impress or endure fancy parties and the pressure of reputation. He went back to who he really was, a man who loves justice and fairness and knows what's worth defending. One morning he stopped by with a bag of still warm pastries. "Mom, I start the new job today." I smiled. "The small firm up north?" He nodded, a calm in his eyes I hadn't seen since the day the wedding was called off. "I don't need much, Mom. I just want to do what I believe is right." I looked at him, pride swelling in my chest. Sometimes we have to lose everything to find ourselves, and Nathan was doing exactly that. As for me, after years living in the shadow of hurt and fear, I decided to return to the place that once gave me strength, Harborview Nursing Home. I had worked night shifts there for 20 years, caring for the elderly who'd been forgotten. Walking through the old iron gate, the familiar scent of disinfectant pulled at my heart. Residents still sat along the hallway, eyes turned toward the purple garden. The old manager, Teresa, recognized me and ran to hug me. "Eleanor, my goodness, how long has it been? I read all about you. You were brave." I smiled lightly. Not brave, just done being silent. From that day on, I spent a few days each week there. I helped residents write letters, tell their stories, and more importantly, be heard. Many had been abandoned by their own children, labeled burdens, useless. Hearing them, I saw myself someone pushed aside because of age and silence. Once, an elderly man named George, a former teacher, said to me, "Miss Eleanor, people only grow old when they let others decide their worth." I laughed and answered, "Then maybe I'm younger than I think, George." The stories at the nursing home were therapy for my soul. I felt myself coming back to life piece by piece, not through victory, but through the peace of simply being myself. One evening, Nathan came to see me just as I finished a volunteer shift. He sat on a wooden bench outside, the golden sunset spilling over his brown hair. "Mom," he said, voice low and sincere, "thank you for not giving up." I sat next to him and looked toward the trees rustling in the wind. "It wasn't for you, Nathan," I answered gently. "It was for me too," he smiled. "I think you finally found yourself again." I nodded. I learned something. Love isn't about enduring, it's about having boundaries. When you love someone, you don't let them trample your dignity, whether it's your child or the person your child loves. Nathan squeezed my hand. "You're right, I learned that from you." That night, driving home, I turned on the radio. A classic jazz track played, the warm saxophone blending with raindrops on the window. I smiled for the first time in months. I didn't feel like anyone's victim. I was a survivor, a witness, and someone who had walked through the storm. News about the Green family faded, though people in town still whispered. Richard Green sold what was left to pay debts and left Charleston quietly. Isabella, the bride who once mocked me with a voice cold as steel, vanished from public life. No one mentioned her anymore, as if she'd never existed. Once I saw a note in a small cafe's paper. "Green family officially dissolves company." I folded it and said nothing. Some endings don't need our applause, only our release. And then, I started writing. At first, just a few notes in an old notebook, but the words poured out as if they'd been waiting for years. I wrote about that party, about the sentence, "After tomorrow, you won't be part of this family anymore." I wrote about the pain, the pushback, and how the truth finally spoke. I titled the manuscript, "The Day I Was Erased," the day I was erased from the world. Not to relive the pain, but to remind myself and anyone pushed to the margins that we still exist and we still have a voice. I didn't send it to the press or post it online. I printed a few copies and kept them in a drawer at the nursing home. Whenever someone told me they felt invisible to their own family, I handed them a copy and smiled. "Read this. Maybe you'll realize you're not alone." One fall morning, I was invited to share my story at a community talk. I stood before nearly 100 people, mostly middle-aged women and a few silver-haired men. When I told them about the humiliation, the misunderstanding, and then standing up for myself, many cried. An elderly lady came up, took my hand and said, "You told my story, Eleanor. The difference is, you did what I didn't dare to do." I hugged her and whispered, "It's never too late to speak up." That night, back home, I sat on the porch as the wind off the Ashley River cooled the air. The streetlights cast a soft yellow over the damp road, and in that moment, I felt my heart settle. I remembered everything from those hospital night shifts, and the tears over a cold cup of tea to the moment I stood before Isabella and said, "Watch me." My life, it turns out, was never truly erased. It only faded for a while, waiting for me to color it back in with courage and truth. I looked out and smiled softly. When someone tries to erase you from the picture, become the color they can't cover. And in that quiet night, I knew I had moved past the storm, not with victory, but with the light of self-respect. That night, I sat at the old wooden table and closed the brown leather journal I'd been writing for months. On the cover, I stuck a small label, "The Day I Was Erased." Inside was my whole story, from the shame of being cut out of a family to the day I stood up and took my dignity back. I looked up at the photo on the wall, a wedding picture that never happened. In the frame, Nathan is smiling brightly, and the space where Isabella would have been is empty. That empty space once broke my heart, but now I see it as something beautiful. It isn't the absence of love, it's the place reserved for the truth, I said softly, as if talking to my reflection. I don't need the title of perfect mother-in-law, I just need respect as a person and as a mother who loved and sacrificed the right way. For years, I believed silence was a kind of virtue, that enduring was how you kept the peace. But now I know silence isn't noble if it gives others a chance to crush your dignity. Life can take your honor for a while, but no one can take the truth. It stays hidden or twisted, but it finds a way back, like light slipping through a morning door. I poured myself a cup of black tea, the steam curling into the air. Outside, the wind from the Ashley River carried salt and rustling leaves. Charleston had settled into quiet with only a few lights across the water. I turned to the last pages of my journal where I wrote the final line. When people try to erase you from the picture, become the color they can't cover. I read it over and over and smiled. It wasn't just a message for me, it was for anyone who's ever been called invisible. I thought of the women at the nursing home, forgotten by their children, treated as burdens. Each of their stories was a life being slowly erased by neglect. But I believe if one person speaks up, others will start to believe they can too. So if you're still listening to me now, I want to ask you something. If it were you, would you stay silent, or would you stand up like I did? Would you bow your head to be called good, or lift it to live true to yourself? I don't expect everyone to do what I did. We all have different fears and limits, but I hope that, just once, you'll ask yourself, what is my worth? Who gets to define it for me? If you're still here with me now, let me say one thing, slowly from the heart of a mother who has been hurt to your heart. Never let anyone make you believe you have no value. No one has the right to erase you from your own story. Even if people turn away, even if the world is quiet, you still have yourself, your voice, and your right to be loved. If my story brings someone to mind, a mother, a father, or even yourself, leave me a note. Tell me where you're listening from, what city, what country, or simply, I understand. I will read every word, because each message proves the truth still has someone listening. And if you believe, even just a little, that justice and self-respect are worth defending, please like, subscribe, and share this story. Not to make me famous, but so those who are hurting out there will know they are not alone. From Charleston, where the sunset still falls gently, like the calm years we once lost, I'm sending you a blessing and a gentle reminder. Speak up before someone else speaks for you. I am Eleanor Shaw, and I'm still here, still believing in the light, and still believing in you.